So let's talk a little bit about our
The
favorite
rest
pop
of the
star.
crazy family. Well,
Our
look,
favorite pop star, yours and mine.
first and foremost, watching that documentary, I got to tell you, like it really made me feel um, extremely sad that an individual as talented as Britney Spears, or any individual really, I mean, not just her, but in this instance, we're talking about her, that talented, all of a sudden
Couldn't
looks
resist it.
over and says, I love it. No, I love it. Says, hey, you know what? I'm going to turn over my free will. Like I am now an indentured servant, because that's what she was and is.
Essentially,
They were
yeah.
like, yeah, you keep working and making millions, but don't worry, sweetie. We'll make all the decisions for you. You don't have to pay a bill, but you can't, spend it how you want to. You can ask me and I'll tell you if you can spend it that way. So it is really an interesting dichotomy. When you talk about guardianships, I guess let's lay that foundation, brother. So, when you talk about a guardianship, what is the purpose of a guardianship typically? When do you get them, right? It revolves around capacity, an individual's ability to provide or make decisions for themselves, right? So if you get in a situation, whether it's emotionally or physically, you can get a guardianship. So let's say someone is like incapacitated, they're in a car accident, now they're immobilized, so they can't go get groceries, they can't do banking. Even if you're online now, you may be able to do it that way, but you just lack the ability to do that. You need somebody to help, somebody who has legal authority to sign your name, to pay your bills, to do the kinds of things that you need done. It can be tremendously helpful.
And I think it's important to differentiate between, a guardianship of the person and a guardianship of the estate. So a guardianship of the person is typically, okay, I'm going to decide what you're going to wear. I'm going to decide what kind of medical care you get. I'm going to decide where you live. I'm going to decide what what your 3 square meals a day are. I'm going to decide if you have to take a multivitamin. Any number of different decisions of the person that need to be made. A guardianship of the estate, you're talking about any financial transactions. Can I sell your house? Can I sell your car? Can I can I invest your money the way that I see fit? And that's, I think that's probably the biggest deal with the Britney Spears case, is that it's a guardianship of the estate. And we're talking about an estate that's worth in excess of $60 million. So you're talking about rights to music. You're talking about, money made from stage shows. I mean, she was making somewhere in the neighborhood of $52,000 a show or something in Vegas or something. I mean, just an insane number.
$6 million a year, or something like that.
Yeah, it was just an insane number. And, like you said, I mean, this thing, what strikes me as extremely odd about the whole thing is like, she literally can't decide if she wants to go, travel to Hawaii and spend a week in, at the Four Seasons. They can say no. She can't do it. She's got the money. She's got the ability to travel. She's obviously healthy, in terms of like physically healthy. She's able to travel. Now, the only thing that struck me as a little cautious about this thing is I saw one of the lawyer that wanted to represent her was interviewed, and he went to the court to petition to represent her. And the judge said, I'm not going to let you represent her because I don't think she has capacity to hire you. So, and he was relying on a report that to my understanding, or to the best of my knowledge in the documentary, that report was published, not published, but reported to the court 10 years ago. I don't know if it's been updated. I don't know if she's had further mental evaluations. She's been under this conservatorship for years. And I mean, if you read the tabloids, I would think she was pretty out of control with the custody issue with her sons and her ex-husband and the divorce and everything, at that time. And maybe that was necessary at the time, but then you have to talk about, when is the time to review that? When is there a time for a least restrictive alternative? Is she capable of doing some of this stuff? I mean,
yeah, brother. I mean, and here's the part that got me was, okay, so I can't tell you how many times I've represented individuals who lose their frickin' mind through a divorce. They lose their frickin' mind. They stop being the person that everybody knows them as, because they're in this emotional tumult that they can't frickin' see their way out of, until we get them to the end. And then all of a sudden they wake up and it's like, oh my God, I'm the person that I was before. And so the fact that, they went in and were able to get a guardianship. Now, trust me, she did some crazy shit. Let's just be honest. I mean, she did some crazy shit, but did it warrant what they did legally to her? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not there.
But I think they had some allegations that she was getting she was going to maybe potentially get fleeced by somebody. Some manager came in and wanted to take over, and all that
Dude, that's
stuff.
like every star in Hollywood. Like, how many times do we hear their business manager ran off with millions of dollars? They don't get a freaking conservatorship on them. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that part of the documentary really just kind of got under my skin, because I was like, freaking let her go. You know what I mean? Like, let her do what she does. And if she makes a mistake, a colossal failure of it, guess what? She's like every other person on the planet. If she's sentient, if she has capacity. And I agree with you. When the judge said, hey, I'm not going to let this attorney represent you because I don't believe she has the capacity to enter into a contract, but she has the capacity to go out and perform nightly and make millions of dollars. What the hell?
Sell products.
How is that?
Endorse products.
Yeah. Do commercials. Yeah. Like, she can work her ass off. She's got capacity to do that, but she doesn't have capacity to spend her own money. That's some bullshit, in my opinion. But, hey, I'm not the judge.
Which I think is basically, I think from what I gathered, her position on it now is if I don't have control, I ain't doing it. So
yeah, good for her. Good for her.
This money machine stopping.
More than enough money. Yeah, she'd sit on her ass and just do like Instagram videos and just be like, "Hey, I'm crazy over here."
But I mean, let's talk about that. I mean, yeah, let's talk about Instagram videos or Twitter videos or what have you. I mean, technically, a guardian can lock that stuff down for you. I mean, literally, you don't have rights. It restrains your ability to do things. So, from what I gathered from the documentary, they really keep a tight circle on her in terms of, interviews she can give, Twitter posts or Facebook posts or Instagram posts that she can put out there. And there's a really tight leash on her. And my concern about this whole thing is the self-serving nature of it all. So you've got dad, who's the conservator, who's getting paid. His lawyer is getting paid. They're all getting paid by the same person. Brittany's term money. And then you've got Brittany's
she's paying what, 3
lawyers. Yeah,
Brittany's paying her dad's lawyer, the ad litem or conservator, her dad, and her own lawyer.
And her dad petitioned the court apparently to get a percentage of some of the stuff that she does, which to me is that's really sketchy, if you ask me. I mean, like I said, I haven't reviewed all the legal documents in that thing, but just from like you said, she's able to go out and do commercials, work her ass off, but she can't manage her own affairs. Give
me a break. Well, and I guess that let's talk about like the legal implications of like the two parts, right? So, there's all kinds of legal documents that you can execute, at least in the state of Texas and Florida, that will give you legal authority to make decisions for other people. And, these can happen at different times. So let's just talk about like a power of attorney, right? People hear all this and they'll say like, well, what does that mean technically? Like I put my son on it. Okay, well, your son can go to the bank and make withdrawals from your bank account. He can buy cars, he can sell property, he can open credit cards. He can do all those as if he were you. That's what power of attorney means. They have the ability, all the legal rights that you have to make decisions financially with your estate, with your money, with your credit, whatever it may be. Or even if we go flip it, now we're talking about a medical power of attorney that's over your person. Well, okay, so what does that, when does that come into play? It's, if they want to call into question your capacity, let's say, a lot of individuals, when they start suffering from Alzheimer's or dementia, early onset of that, they'll come in, they'll talk to us and say, hey, we want, these types of documents in case I get to the point where I can't make these decisions for myself. But that's a very complicated situation. So if you have that, when do you step in? And what does it mean? Does it mean that you choose their doctor for them? Yeah, you could. You could change doctors. You could change treatment. If somebody comes in and says, hey, you've got aggressive cancer, we can do chemo, we can do surgery. It's a 50-50 shot. What do you want to do? The person who's standing there who lacks capacity no longer makes a decision. The person with the piece of paper comes in and says, I like this one better, which may not be the course of action that you would have done if you were sentient at that time. Or maybe you still are and you dispute that. You know what I'm saying?
Where we see the biggest, and again, in your experience, at least in our experience, I think where we see the biggest problems in estates are not when the person dies. They're not stealing money out of the estate when the person dies. It's when they get a power of attorney over somebody's finances. And, this wayward son who's been on drugs or whatever for years and years, all of a sudden shows back up, 10 months before grandma dies, and grandma had $1 million in the bank, whenever 10 months ago. And then whenever she passes away, she has $500,000 left. And, this wayward son has a big lavish lifestyle. I mean, and he shows up with a power of attorney that says, oh, I've done this, this, and this on grandma's money. We've seen that. I don't know how many times. I mean, the different versions of that set of facts happens all the time. So if you're going to give somebody a power of attorney to handle things in your incapacity, or make sure because you can have the power of attorney become effective upon incapacity, or you can have it become effective immediately. When you sign one that allows somebody to become effective immediately, they can do anything they want with your money. And you have got to be very, very careful about who you put in charge of that, because, I've seen many, many, many parents get fleeced by kids or different things like that, because they've been granted this ability, and they use emotional things to get there. Like, I'm upset at you, mom, because you didn't pay attention to me when I was 15, and it's carried over for my whole life, and blah, blah, blah. So they feel guilty and give them the power of attorney, and then all of a sudden they get fleeced. So it's unfortunately a more common tale than you might think.
Yeah, not only that, I mean, but like another example of when you might execute one of these is, let's say you have young children and you're going to travel. A lot of times, parents will execute these types of documents as they travel, if they're traveling without their family. So they may give it to not even a family member. They may say, hey, this couple, they're best friends. We're going to give you this, power of attorney over our estate should something happen to us while we travel. Now, obviously, we all know it's fairly safe to travel, but there are, plane crashes, train wrecks, car wrecks. And so, it's a wise thing to consider, but I think you absolutely need to do your homework and really contemplate what powers it is that you're giving and what parameters you want to put in place. Because the cool thing about when you do these is you can target them. One, you can target them spatially. And what I mean by that is, like, I'm executing it today. My trip is going to be 2 weeks. This expires in 2 weeks if I don't renew it automatically. So then your will, your trust documents, whatever it may be, would kick over and take over at that point. Or you could say it's indefinite, to your point, until I rescind it. Until I come back in and I execute a new one, it's going to be in place. Or whenever I'm incapacitated, if I'm never incapacitated, then it never comes into power or into play. So, there's just a lot of things to really think through and talk to your lawyer about as you contemplate, what these are, and do I need them? Do I need them for my crazy family? I have a crazy brother who, I really feel is bipolar, and he is in the hospital all the time. And so he's got, when he's taking his meds, he's fine. When he's not on his meds, he's like off the charts. And so, can I do something? Well, you may have to go to court and do what they did to Brittany, right? Which is a, compelled guardianship, where you go in, you file with, in Texas, that would be the probate court, statutory probate court. It could be a court of general jurisdiction, depending on where you're living, that you go in and you file these documents that say they lack the capacity to provide and care for themselves. Somebody else needs to do it, and I want to be that person. And there's some bars a lot of times to being able to do that. Usually you can't have been convicted of a felony. You can't have been convicted of a crime of moral turpitude. They're going to want to try to do a little bit, but it's not like it's
normally they'll have some safeguards. We'll appoint an attorney for the person who's subject to the guardianship and have the investigation done, and you have to have a doctor, do an evaluation and say, yes, this person is incapacitated in these particular ways. So, and typically it's the judge's responsibility to find the least restrictive alternative. But, sometimes that happens and sometimes that doesn't, with our justice system. So,
yeah, no, I agree.
Like I said, I think the biggest thing to worry about is the amount of fraud that can take place from the time of an incapacity to the time of a death, or within a situation of these guardianships. I mean, people that are looking to defraud estates typically do it under powers of attorney or those kinds of things, because even under a guardianship, normally a guardian has some accountability to the court. They have to file a report. They have to, notify the court every so often and let the court know what's going on with the guardianship, and what's what the medical condition of the ward is, and what the financial condition of the ward is. And typically that's an annual report, at least in Texas. But, under a power of attorney, they're not typically filed with courts. And so there's no accountability looking over it. And
that's absolutely the thing about it too. I mean, because there's so many variations thereof. So even courts kind of look at it and go, when they see the document, you have a lot of free power, free will to do and delegate these rights and duties. You can do them piecemeal, you can do them in totem. So it definitely.
And so, and I agree with you. I think Brittany was totally out of control whenever they put this in place, but has the due diligence in the subsequent years, been done to see whether she really still needs this or not. I mean, she's obviously not a danger to herself. She's obviously not a danger to her kids, so, is she really, does she not know the value of a dollar? I mean, she obviously knows the value of a dollar. She's refusing to perform and give her dad any money because she's not getting any freedom. So, she obviously knows the value of a dollar.
Yeah. Well, and it just seemed like they really put her in a no-win situation. Like they leveraged, it seemed like anyways, and who the hell knows, we're all using this based on, at least what I saw in the documentary, which seemed pretty reputable, but it seemed like they leveraged her desire to have possession time with her kids to her relinquishing more control over the estate, which is just horrendous if that is the case. I mean, and that a court wouldn't look at that and say like, that just ain't right. I tell everybody there's this ain't right meter. I mean, that should have been pulling the judges like this, like that just ain't right. Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, who knows? I feel bad for her. I feel like if there was ever a time, she obviously has a groundswell of public opinion behind her now that says, hey, at least relook at it. I mean, and do it with some open oversight because, all this has been closed doors. Which usually it is. I mean, everybody kind of wants to make a big deal out of that and say like, well, they're doing this all behind closed doors and nobody knows it should be open.
I was shocked that a judge in California would do that of all places. California typically is the, land of crazy, right? I mean, they let anything go out there.
Yeah. But it just so happens that, a lot of times, even in high profile cases, that's when those restrictions will be eased. Because there's so much public demand for information that they just kind of look at it and go, okay, well, you're not going to get all of it, but you'll get some of it. Where in, the normal Joe Schmoes, the Sams and Brians of the world, the court's going to say, hey, this is closed. It may have a public setting where somebody can come in and like sit down if they wanted to. But most of the time, these types of cases have confidentiality, so that type of exposure doesn't really happen because there's just like you're dealing with financial information, you're dealing with stuff that has implications for people's estates and money and their personal potential health information, which is obviously protected as well.
Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the Top Texas Lawyers podcast. If you would like a consultation with either Brian or Sam, please call 1-888-981-7509 or visit us on the web at astxlegal.com. Once again, that's astxlegal.com. Thank you very much.